Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. The sun was setting over the horizon as she brought me another drink. A pretty waitress, dark skin, long black hair tied back in a ponytail, flowers around her neck. I was having trouble deciding which was more beautiful, dusk over the ocean or her. My entire mind was telling me it was the latter. After everything I've been through, though, I couldn't get the nerve to ask for her number, even as she flashed a coy smile at me and turned to walk away. Everything was perfect. The sunset, the drink, finally being on a damned vacation after working my ass off for the collective these past 2 decades. Not a worry in sight, except I could hear this nagging sound. High-pitched ringing, right below the surface of my mind. It was constant, wouldn't leave no matter how many times I tried swatting away an unseen bug. Oh, hell. I woke up, my phone ringing off the damned hook, with that one dreaded word showing me exactly who was calling work. Letting out a groan, already missing the beach and pretty girl bringing me drinks, I picked up and hit the green button. Yeah, what's up? I asked, knowing that it was probably going to be some more insanity. Never a day off in this line of work. There's a car waiting for you outside. We need you to come in ASAP. The voice on the other line was short and to the point. Another tear? I tried asking, knowing there wasn't going to be any answer, but pushing my luck anyway. Their only response was silence. Checking the screen, they had already hung up. Of course. Good talk. Even though I didn't want to, I rolled out of bed, standing up and stretching before pulling curtains aside to look out. There, waiting on the street, was a black SUV, lights on, just waiting for me to step out and get in. God, I hate it when they pull this secretive government agency bullshit. It's so melodramatic. Hell, the HQ is only a couple miles down the road. I could easily get there within a few minutes if they just asked me to. Instead, they have to send these stupid cars that make it look like I'm going to get kidnapped with a bag over my head to never be seen again. Just for the hell of it, I made them wait while I grabbed coffee and got dressed. Hell, the driver is probably getting paid by the hour. They should thank me. It's not like collective higher-ups are going to give a damn if I'm a few minutes late anyway, right? Not to mention it's 3 in the damn morning, so my restful sleep and nice dream got interrupted. I at least need some coffee as compensation. The driver didn't say anything to me as I got into the car, just started driving me towards downtown. I sipped my coffee as we went, curious about what kind of fresh hell the collective was calling me in for at this hour. Think I'm going to demand some vacation time after this, no matter how small time the job may be. I've earned it, damn it. Especially after all that I've done with the Cognizant program and closing up these, damned dimensional tears. God, please don't let this be another tear. A reality aberration that's come through to our world that I can deal with. A whole tear in the fabric of reality, though. I've only got so many of those left in me before they take me out for good. Hopefully they at least give me a good team for this one, if that's the case. The collective HQ was a tall, unassuming building in the middle of downtown. A little sign on the front had it labeled as a marketing agency, though I have no clue if there was any marketing business run out of the upper floors. Hell, I have no idea why the building is so tall. Everything that we worked with in the collective was underground, in a massive network of tunnels and sub-basements right below our feet. This place stretched for miles and held unspeakable horrors from the aberrations that we had put away in years past. If this place ever came under attack or fell in some way, well, humanity isn't far behind. In our universe, at least. The driver parked on the curb, still not saying a word, as the doors unlocked and I stepped out. Humid, hot air rushed past me as I quickly walked towards the building, pushing through the double doors and making my way across the lobby to the elevator. The usual spot, sub-basement 4, lit up as I scanned my badge on the elevator console. A brief hum and stutter, then the elevator was heading down. It opened into the same off-white fluorescent-lit hallways that I've been seeing for the past 20 years. Hell, I don't think I remember a time before the collective at this point. Just endless chases to close tiers and capture aberrations. The hallway was almost always empty here, despite the constant bustle that this place has going on. After a few minutes of walking alone, I finally saw an older man standing outside one of the briefing room doors. "Agent Harker, good to see you again." Ronald, the old man, stuck out a hand to shake. I took it, giving one good grip before letting go and following him into the room as he started speaking. "Though I'm sure you can't say the same. Always some new shit show when we have to call you in." Interrupted a nice dream I was having. I grunted, taking a seat at the small table and opening the folder he threw down in front of me. For a second I thought the pictures inside were black and white, but after staring for a moment, I realized I was looking at a bleak, icy landscape. "So, where are you sending me?" "Arctic," Ronald said, sitting down across from me. "We have a hell of a problem, pardon the pun." Scanning over the file, I started to put together what he was talking about. Arctic Research Base, studies in occult powers that opened a tier between dimensions. Jesus, the Nazis. Been a while since I've seen these bastards involved in anything. How the hell was a Nazi base still holding out in Tvive? I asked, looking up at him. Honestly, I'm as surprised as you are. We only just found out about this place from a defector that showed up on our doorstep. Said there's been this faction of the SS out there since before Hitler. Apparently they just holed up and didn't leave after he decided to have himself a little lead snack down in that bunker. Kinda became their own thing, looking for ways to bring him back through unnatural processes, Ronald said, leaning back in his chair and lighting up a cig. Sure as shit they found a way, too. You're fucking with me. I'm hunting down Hitler? I asked, looking up at him from the files. If only it was just that. God, what a clusterfuck. Ronald shook his head now, leaning forward and taking a long drag off his cigarette before going on. They opened a portal to hell, Harker. Oh, come on, I said, pushing the file away and rubbing my eyes. It was way too early in the morning for shit like this. So this isn't just a tier we're dealing with, but a straight-up hellscape. Yes, and it's spreading. The longer the portal is open, the more ground it starts to cover. Currently, it's infected a 5-mile radius from the base. Thankfully, they put the damn thing in the Arctic instead of somewhere on their home turf at the time. He replied, How long has it been open for that it's taken up that much space? I feel like I already knew the answer. And how long until it spreads beyond the wastes out there? It's been a week, according to our source, he said, another long drag on the cig. And according to calculations, we have a month before it starts creeping towards the shores of Greenland and northern Canada. So we're on a major time crunch. Oh hell, I muttered, to which Ronald let out a dry laugh. Quite literally, yes, he responded, You'll be going in with a 3-person team. One occult specialist, Vera, will be able to close the portal through a ritual. The other 2, Pitt and Marcus, will be your muscle and demo experts. I've also given approval for the defector to go with you as a guide. Her name is Celine. Quite a nice woman, surprisingly. Said she always wanted to get out of the cult, but had no way to escape until now. Watch out that she doesn't double-cross you. Think she will? I asked, eyeing him. Ronald usually had a good nose for things like treason and betrayal, but I also knew he had a history of being soft on pretty women. From the picture of her in the file, she was definitely in that category. Early 30s, long dark hair, deep green eyes, and a soft face that had definitely been through some shit. With any luck, she was telling the truth, and just wanted out of the hellhole she escaped from. Worst comes to worst, she dies with the rest of them when we close the portal. I certainly hope she doesn't. She could be a valuable asset, he said, stamping out the now spent cig in an ashtray on the table. Speaking of assets, nothing leaves this place. Understood? No liabilities, no survivors. Whoa, hold on. You said this was basically a compound, right? Families and stuff? You know I don't kill kids. Not doing it, I said, starting to stand up and looking him right in the eyes. You don't have to worry about killing any kids. How do you think they opened the portal? He said, getting up and opening the door for me. I just stared at him for a moment, dumbfounded. All he could do was nod, closing his eyes and brushing his hair back while reaching in his pocket for another cig. Yeah, ask her about what happened on your way there. It's, well, I don't use the term fucked up lightly, you know. I left the room, heading downstairs to the armory where I could pick out whatever weapons and ammo might be needed for the situation. To my surprise, the rest of the team was already waiting down there. Vera, a woman my age with dark auburn hair and slender frame, gave me a wave as I walked in. We worked together before on a tulpa case down in New Orleans years ago, and I'm pretty sure she saved my ass more than once on that trip. The others, Pitt and Marcus, looked like the number 10, standing next to each other. Pitt was tall, wiry, with a big bald spot beginning to show on his head, even though he was barely past his 30s. Pitt, meanwhile, was one of those guys that looked like he was heavy set, but was really just an insane amount of muscle, disguised by his build, with a massive, bushy beard to match. They were taking guns and explosives off the walls, stuffing them into tactical bags as preparation. I made my way to Vera for a rundown on what they had so far. Got the essentials? I asked. She just nodded in response, tossing me a jar of clear liquid. Holy water. I've already put in an order for all our ammo to be dipped and consecrated while they're at it, too. Ronnie give you the rundown on what we're after already? She replied. Nazis, a hellgate, the frozen tundra of the Arctic. I've played Wolfenstein before. We'll be all right. I sighed. She just chuckled. If only it was that easy. She said, Look, if we run into Mecha Hitler, then I'll worry. I joked, half flirting with her. I tried to stay away from interwork relationships, but she was... wow. Not much else to say there. Her smile was dazzling. Think you two can wait to fuck after the mission is over? Pitt shouted across the room. I flipped a middle finger at him as Vera just laughed, turning back to her work. In her tack bag, I saw the usual arsenal for fighting off the unholy holy water, a couple of crosses, and quite a few old dusty books with strange runes on the front. Likely Aramaic, used for casting the rituals to close the portals, or open them, if that's something one was stupid enough to try. Where's the defector? I asked. looking around now. My question was answered almost immediately. She was sitting next to one of the far walls, staring, straight ahead, as if there was nothing going on around her. Poor woman had that vacant 1,000-yard stare that I've seen so many times on these missions after something bad has happened. Jesus, she looks rough. Yeah, she's been through some shit, Vera replied. We continued preparing in relative silence, gathering weapons, ensuring we had everything possible we may need to face the threat of hell we were walking into. After about 2 hours, we were ready. Heading up to the roof, a chopper was waiting for us, ready to fly us over to the airport for the long flight ahead. It was a short ride, everyone sitting in quiet, as the hum of the blades above drowned out any attempt at conversation. When the airfield appeared, a cargo jet was waiting for us, already loaded with comms equipment, so we could report back to HQ as needed for backup or just to send updates. We loaded in, taking off not long after. We all sat, saying nothing as the ground was left far behind, the relative safety of home with it. So, you were a Nazi? Marcus asked Celine, almost point blank, breaking the silence as we flew. Pitt let out a laugh as Vera just groaned. Don't antagonize her, Marcus. She's the one guiding us when we get there, I said. No, it's fine, Celine replied. Her voice was soft, quiet, a slight tinge of a German accent underlying her English. I was born as one of them? Yes. Now, I want all of them to burn. Hell yeah. I'll drink to that, Marcus said, raising a small flask. Vera smacked it from his hand, spilling an unknown spirit all over the floor. Hey, that was my only one. You're about to go on a very dangerous mission where all of us are risking our lives. You can handle being sober until we make it back alive. Jesus, Vera scolded him, making him turn bright red under the bushy beard. She turned back to Celine. What made you want to get out? I grew up hearing all about the glory of the Reich, being told that we were the ones who were going to restore power to this world. She started, sitting forward with a sigh. Do you have any idea what it's like growing up and never seeing the sun? It's cold up there. We were told we could never go outside, never let the corruption of the world in. We were told we had to stay pure for the day the Führer returned. Oh, here we fucking go, Pitt whispered, grabbing Marcus's flask from the floor and tipping it up to his mouth for any dregs of alcohol he could manage. When I was 20, I was chosen. I was one of the ones who would keep the Führer's legacy alive, even after he had been gone for decades. Through some of our scientists, I was given a child, a beautiful daughter I named Annalise. She was strong, beautiful. I raised her to be kind and caring to those around her. She was the only warmth I ever felt in that cold compound. So long as she was near me, the light of 1,000 suns paled in comparison. Then they took her from me, she said, eyes going cold as small tears began to form in the corners. These bastards. They held me back as I screamed and clawed at them to let me go, let me take her from there. I saw them lead her into a circle with the other children and slit her throat, spilling blood onto the gateway. They traded her life for power, without ever thinking that she could be destined for greater things. She broke down crying now, as Vera moved over to put a hand on her shoulder. Choking back tears, Celine continued, I swear that I will slit their throat myself. She whispered now, tears ending as she came back to being cold and detached. They have taken the only sunlight I've ever known. I shall make them feel the cold absence of the sun for eternity in return. Fuck. That's metal. Marcus let out a low whistle as I kicked him in the shin, shushing him in the process. Estimated arrival in 5 hours. A voice came over the plane comms. All right. Everyone get some rest and be ready to go as soon as we reach the destination. Got it? I said, getting nods from the rest. I sat back in the hard seat, closing my eyes and leaning my head back, letting the hum of the wind outside lull me to the last peaceful sleep I may ever get. Holy shit, look at that. I could hear Pitt shouting as the plane went through turbulence, shocking me awake in my seat. I rubbed sleep from my eyes, shaking my head as the weight of exhaustion tried to close them again. Pitt shouted again. Harker, seriously, come over here and look. Yeah, on my way, I said, getting to my feet and desperately trying to stay steady as the plane lurched to one side. Oh hell, it's coming at us, Marcus shouted, diving past me, back to his seat. The hell are you talking about? My question was barely out before I got to the window and saw for myself. I'll be damned. A massive creature was flying right beside our plane, at least the half the size of the cargo jet we were on. It was, well, I don't think there was any way it was friendly. Long, leathery wings held it aloft, flapping in the cold air. Its head was vaguely human, with a pointed reptilian snout that ended in slits. A jaw full of sharp teeth was set under, but the biggest thing that stood out was twofold. Eyes that looked like they were at the same time black as soot and blazing with fire. Atop its head were massive curling horns that looked like they could easily gore through a horse and keep going if it chose to. I swear it looked directly at me before diving at the plane again, side-swiping it with a massive humanoid hand that ended in sharp claws. We could hear metal tear as it breached the hull, sending the plane careening off in the other direction for a moment. Everyone hang on to something. We're going down. The pilot came over the PA with a warning right as the demon made another swipe, this time cleaving the wing, straight off of the plane. Alarms began blaring as we quickly began to tip forward, gravity taking hold as pilots desperately tried to keep us steady. I could feel the plane trying to spin, keeling one way as the demon let out a screech that could be heard over the wind and blaring alarms, full of anger, pain, and hatred all at the same time. Strap in, I shouted at the others as we all dragged ourselves to seats, working against multitudes of G-forces that were trying to throw me every way possible. I managed to get back into the seat and pull the belt over my body. There was nothing else I could do but close my eyes, grit my teeth, and pray we didn't end up as a bloody smear on the ice outside. The howl of the demon came through the hull again, telling us that even if we made it out of this, there was more to contend with, if we just wanted to survive. Sounds of wind mixed with the alarm as we spun faster and faster. One of the others, I think Pitt, started making retching noises as we went down, spewing up whatever little food he had in his stomach alongside the alcohol. I held on tight, trying to ensure my body wasn't too tense, because it would only make the impact even worse when we finally hit the ground. All right, we're coming in hot. I'm going to give them a little surprise, though. I can see the base, the pilot said over the comms, before another ungodly sound of metal tearing interrupted him. The plane pulled to one side, leveling out for a brief second before we could feel ourselves drop through the air once more. Just for a moment, there was peace. The next moment, we were all jolted by the impact as the plane hit the ground, throwing debris everywhere. I was knocked out, though only for a few minutes, I think. When I awoke, the alarm was still blaring, but Vera was standing above me, desperately trying to undo my seatbelt and pull me from the wreckage. Looking around, I could see the others all still alive, working to get their equipment from the quickly burning wreckage as flames began to catch. I got my wits about me, walking out of the downed plane and seeing where we crashed. The moment the Arctic cold hit me, I was ready to throw myself back in the flames. The others walked out beside me, looking at the small building we had crashed maybe 50 feet from, with just one double door on the side as an entrance. We looked back to see the pilot clambering out of the cockpit, heading our way, as we heard the hellish screech from above. That thing was coming back around, looking for any survivors that it could tear apart with those wicked claws. "Don't worry about equipment. We need to get the hell away from that thing," I shouted, pulling a pistol from my side and starting to run for the doors. The rest got the idea, including Celine, and broke out into a desperate spring towards the bunker entrance. We all hit the door at once, trying to force it open as the demon came diving from above. As Marcus and Pitt pushed against the iced-over mechanism on the door, I pulled back, firing a shot at the demon to try and distract it. The pilot did the same, running off a few feet to try and distract so the rest of us could get in. "No, don't go too far." My warning didn't come nearly fast enough. Before we knew it, the pilot was gone, spirited into the air while sharp claws dug into him. The demon was carrying him in the lower claws where its feet were, and when it got up to a decent height above us, it made sure we knew what our fate would be if it got claws on us too. The damned thing grabbed the pilot by both feet, taking one in each hand, and pulled apart like he was a fucking wishbone, tearing him clean in half down the middle. Blood rained down, steaming in the cold Arctic air before painting the icy tundra below in a terrible splatter. Hell with this. I made my way to the door, giving it a few good kicks to break the ice loose on the mechanism before it burst inward, warm air rushing out to meet us as the demon began to dive back down in our direction. We all ran in, throwing the doors closed behind us just as the demon crashed into them, almost coming right through if not for its enormous size. We wasted no time running further in, straight down the staircase in front of us, to get the hell away from not only the freezing cold, but the thing that was now bashing at the door, desperately trying to get in so it could tear us apart, just like the pilot. After 2 flights of stairs going straight down, we stopped to catch our breath, everyone letting out massive gasps as we struggled for air, if only for a moment. "How the fuck do we get out of here now?" Pitt asked, still gasping for air as we all looked at each other. Vera just shook her head, looking to me as Marcus checked his bag, looking at the guns and explosives inside to prepare. I looked in my tack bag as well, pulling out a small paper that had a crude map Celine had drawn when she first arrived at the collective. "Looks like we're almost to the living quarters now. We'll look there for any communication equipment so we can send a message back home. Until we get rid of that thing, though, there's not going to be a way for help to come get us," I said, looking to each of them in turn. Pitt was gritting his teeth as Marcus inspected guns, holding up an AR and loading in a mag that he had a piece of tape on marked, "Holy shit." I looked to Vera with my next question. "We closed the portal. Does that get rid of the one up there?" "Theoretically, yes," she replied, hesitating for a moment. "But we should realistically prepare for every ounce of shit possible to hit the fan. The only information we have on Hellgate infestations is so outdated that we can't be sure what the hell will happen. Hell, the last time one was opened, they ended up just carpeting the entire area with blessed bombs and hoping for the best. That was almost 70 years ago, I think. They didn't even wait for the portal to close before the bombs started to fall. Great. So this is even more of a suicide mission than what we signed up for. Fan-fucking-tastic," Marcus said, handing around more guns with crosses marked on the barrels. "Considering half our ammo is in that flaming pile outside, y'all better make every damn shot count." He handed one to Celine, a small pistol with one of the specially marked mags, before hesitating a moment and looking at me. I just nodded. From what she had told us on the plane, she was trustworthy. But first, I had to ask, "Did you know that thing would be up there?" "No." She shook her head. "When I left, everything was contained to the 4th and 5th sublevels. It's advanced quickly." She pointed to the staircase ahead of us, descending into a dimly lit tunnel. A few feet in the dark concrete of the bunker began to look different. It began to bulge, like tumors were growing from the solid wall and becoming flesh. I could see veins creeping through it, something pumping and causing the walls themselves to pulsate with red and black fluid just under the gnarled surface. "Corruption," Vera whispered, walking a little closer to get a good look. I followed, trying to stop her from getting too close, before realizing it was no use. She was too inquisitive about what we were seeing. Leave it to the occultist to find a hallway of cancerous flesh and be fascinated instead of disgusted. She raised a hand to it before stopping herself. "You guys ever seen a lash egg?" Pitt remarked, looking almost sick as he gazed at the strange substance all over the walls. "Grew up on a farm, went to crack an egg from the coops for breakfast one morning and, well, it came out looking like that. God, I can still smell how awful it was." We shook it off, gathering our wits and making our next move down the hallway. Everyone was careful not to touch the walls, fearing that it may send some kind of alert to whatever denizens were lurking below. God knows the last thing we need is them to know we're already in here, assuming they weren't already alerted by the crash above. Actually, did nobody hear the crash? "Where the hell is everyone?" I asked, looking back at Celine as she simply shrugged. There weren't many of us left after the portal opened. Not many normal people, anyways. A lot of us were relegated to the upper levels while the workers stayed below. Some said that the gate began to affect them, their minds becoming more corrupted as their exposure to hell grew. I don't know, I tried to avoid going anywhere near the gate after they took her, she answered. "Hard to imagine you can corrupt Nazis beyond their default," Marcus said under his breath, getting a laugh out of Pitt. I shushed him as Celine grunted, moving further down the hallway. The smell hit me like a 10-ton truck full of rotten eggs, the worst stench of sulfur I've ever gotten in a full frontal blast, with an added undertone of rotting flesh to really just top off the awful scent sundae that was coming from the other end of the hall. Dull lights hung from the ceiling, leaving us unsure of what may be waiting for us. I pulled up a cloth mask around my neck, desperately hoping it would stop the smell from permeating my nose, making my eyes water as it overwhelmed every sense. Pitt started retching nearby, leaning over near the wall and puking his guts out as the others bravely tried to soldier on. "Jesus, that's awful," Vera said, covering her nose with her hand while keeping the other on her gun, pointed forward. "Only going to get worse," I muttered. We continued to walk in silence, trying our best to overcome the intense smell and stay alert as shadows played on the flesh-filled walls. I swear they were moving, pulsating like there was a pulse running through them. All I could feel was disgust. 2 decades in the collective, and this was by far one of the grossest things I've seen throughout my career, which was, well, the bar was really fucking high. "Just keep moving and keep your eyes open," Celine said, now beginning to really come out of her shell. She had the gun at the ready, pointed forward like she was going to shoot the first damn thing she saw in here. Couldn't really blame her after everything she told us, but I had my worries that she might go a little too trigger-happy. There was movement ahead, not from the living walls, but something moving through them. We heard heavy footsteps tapping along the concrete floor when suddenly a person turned the corner ahead, coming right into our line of sight. At least, he was human at one time, I think. His face was bloody, with both eyes missing from pits of gore where they should have been. Despite the missing vision, it seemed to see us, stopping as it turned the corner and sizing us up for a moment before opening its mouth to let out an inhuman screech that was subsequently cut short by a bullet fired from Celine's gun. It entered clean through one of the empty eye holes, a spray of blood signaling the exit wound from the back as it splattered the wall behind him, blending into the exposed flesh beyond. So much for the stealth option, Marcus muttered, following it up with a creative string of curses I'll likely never hear again in my lifetime. We all decided to rush forward at the same time as the clattering of footsteps began to make their way from down the hall, rushing towards the source before they could overwhelm us. Turning the corner was a momentary mindfuck. Instead of another hallway or stairs, as we expected, it was a massive cavern, a clanging metal pathway leading precariously through a dark pit that looked to be filled with fire somewhere hundreds of feet below. The same flesh-colored walls lined everything, but there was no telling where the end was way down under us. The path was, well, to say I didn't trust, it was an understatement. It was creaky from our first step, and looked like the slightest bit of weight would cause it to fall wildly into the pits of flame below. Any worried I had about the integrity of the walk were immediately thrown out of the window as I saw no less than 4 people coming across from a crevice in the other side of the cavern. They were rushing along the walkway towards us, eyes missing from their skulls just like the one back there, sharp teeth bared and covered in blood as each let out a loud, discordant scream to alert the others. We began to fire off shots, hitting the lead right in the head and causing him to tumble back into the others, knocking one of them over the railing. His body ragdolled down into the pit below, and I swear it looks like the flames came up to meet him. "Run through!" I shouted to the others, taking point and charging ahead. It only took moments to make contact with one, but rather than waste ammo, I crouched down, pushing up with my shoulder to throw him over the railing and into the fire. The second one grabbed onto me, trying to push me over the rails after his comrades. It was stupidly strong, more than any human should be, and I could feel its hands beginning to crush my neck as it wrapped them around, my feet starting to lose contact with the walkway underneath as it pulled me up. The worst part, though, was its breath, hot with the smell of rotting flesh right in my face. I could see from this close that the empty eyes were well on their way to rotting, maggots crawling around inside and feasting on the necrotic flesh within. Just as I felt myself starting to lean over the railing, a knife went through the head from Marcus, and Pitt began puling me back on to the walkway. We quickly pushed the now piled bodies through the bottom rails into the fire and kept moving towards the crevice. When we finally hit the other side, everyone almost collapsed, Pitt practically kissing the ground below as more creaks reminded us of how close we were to being up in flames behind us. What the fuck was that? I thought this place was a bunker. Pitt was gasping from the ground nearby. Hellgates don't just let demons through. They change the geography of everything as they spread, Vera said. She shook her head, letting out a deep sigh. Expect much worse the further in we get. We're basically in hell already. Fantastic. Marcus grunted, holstering his knife and pulling a light machine gun from his tack bag, loading another magazine marked as holy into it. Glad I brought more fucking firepower then. We're gonna need it, I said, nodding to him. Thanks for the assist back there. I'll bill you when we get out of here, he grunted back. We're all billing Ronald double after this bullshit. Vera snorted. Fucking men to that, sister, Pitt said, standing once more and moving forward. All right, onwards and downwards, folks. I began to lead the way, heading down the sloping path through the crevice. The walls of flesh all around us were pulsating more strongly now, like they were getting more energy the closer we were to the center. Lights began to dim as we went, though, so we had to eventually turn our own flashlights on, which made the place even more eerie. So why can't you just close the gate from here, if the corruption has made it this far? Pitt asked Vera as we kept moving. You think dealing with demons is that easy? She scoffed, holding her gun steady in front of her, dust floating through the beam of her flashlight. You can only close a door at the same point it's opened from. Otherwise, you risk blowing the entire thing even wider and damning even more people. You want to try that? You could have just said it wouldn't work, and I would have believed you, you know. He mumbled back, taking it a little personally. The tunnel was only getting darker, walls of flesh fading from a deep crimson to black now, but still pulsating as we went on. A loud roar echoed through the tunnel, causing all of us to stop in our tracks. The fuck is it this time? Marcus asked, holding his gun steady, finger on the trigger. Probably not friendly, Pitt mumbled angrily under his breath. We waited for a moment, prepared to see some kind of terror, but were relieved when nothing came into view. Another low rumble echoed through the tunnel, bouncing off the fleshy walls, but we still didn't see anything. Keep moving, I said, trying to keep my voice low so as not to alert anything that might be listening up ahead. We moved on, steady, silent, straining to hear any noise that may alert us to new dangers in this hellscape. Another roar erupted through the tunnel, but this time from behind us. We all turned, unsure of how anything could get there, but sure as the hell we were standing in, a massive beast was charging at us from the direction we had come from. It was huge, reptilian scales jutting from its skin as it came screaming down the hallway on all four limbs, massive horns tilted down and ready to gore anyone that it was able to catch. We all began to run, throwing caution to the wind regarding anything that may be ahead, only wishing to not get caught by this thing, now gnashing teeth as it gained ground on us rapidly. Light from up ahead told us we were almost out, though whether that was a good thing was yet to be seen. Upon exiting the tunnel, we realized it was a frying pan and fire situation, and the fire was fucking everywhere. There wasn't even a cavern anymore. We had seemingly stepped through the front door right into hell itself, with an open sky before us, flames spouting from the ground all around, and rocky formations all over the place. Everyone dove to the side, getting away from the tunnel entrance as the demon burst through, letting out a loud roar as it skidded to a halt on the rock, bellowing to the sky above and alerting every goddamn thing in earshot that we had arrived. All five of us got to our feet, aiming guns at it and preparing to fire. It's blazing. Eyes looked to each of us in turn, almost daring us to shoot at it. Pitt was the first to open fire, a bullet glancing off one of the massive horns as it opened its mouth wide and pounced, jumping right on him. I heard him scream as sharp fangs tore into his shoulder, biting deep before rearing its head back. Splashing blood all over and reveling as it soaked its chin, Pitt screamed again, raising his gun through the pain and emptying a full clip into the demon from point blank. This only served to make it mad, though, and it lowered open jaws once more, chomping down on Pitt's head and tearing it off in one clean bite, a massive spray of blood going everywhere. "No!" Marcus screamed, pulling the trigger on his gun as the rest of us did the same, aiming for whatever open flesh we could on the creature. Shots only pinged off the scales with no use as the demon looked at us, Pitt's head staring vacantly from between its massive teeth, a scream of horror ringing silently from his mouth. "Sitzen!" A voice came from the distance, booming across the hellscape. The demon obeyed almost immediately, like a damned dog hearing its master. It kept Pitt's head in its jaws for a moment, before the voice came again. "Guter Junge, speisen." With the last command, it crunched down, popping Pitt's eyes from his disembodied head and causing more blood to gush from its lips. It swallowed, a look of satisfaction on its face. From the flames nearby, a man emerged, dressed in an old Nazi officer's uniform, hair cut neatly and slicked back with small glasses near the tip of his nose. He smiled at us as he stepped out onto the rocks nearby, motioning for the demon to go away. It began to slink back into the tunnel, a low grumble emanating from its throat as it licked its lips, staring us all down one by one while it passed. "Celine, you did not alert me that you were back. Mie Nilibi. I see your mission was successful," he said, looking directly at her. She only looked at him, stone-faced as she walked over. "I told them we couldn't trust a fucking Nazi." Marcus spat in their direction. The officer simply smiled, looking at Celine as she now stood by him. "Where is my daughter?" she asked. "Safe with her father, of course, though she's become quite accustomed to her new lifestyle," he said, gesturing off into the distance. "He's been waiting for you." "Celine," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you're going to die, along with everyone else in here. You understand that? I welcome it," she said in return, stone-faced. "Americans, always so self-assured." The man smiled, chuckling to himself. "Now, let us not keep the Führer waiting any longer. He's very hungry." He turned, walking to the edge of the rocky cliff we were standing on, and looking to the fires below. With a wave of his hand, stone began shifting, rising on air to meet him and form a pathway to walk on. I noticed faint blue light forming around his hand, swirling to connect with the levitating rocks as he controlled them with some form of magic. Celine followed, turning from us with one last glare. "Come now," he shouted at us. How he just expected us to follow him was very cocky, especially considering we still had weapons in hand and weren't going to go without a fight. I fired off a shot, hitting him right in the shoulder from behind. He didn't even move, simply turning back to face us with a sigh. "Fine. We will do this the hard way. Guards." 4 massive winged demons suddenly flew up from below the cliffside, wings beating hot air towards us as they descended to our level. Marcus fired off 2 shots, but they bounced off the scales with next to no problem. One of Vera's ended up hitting one right through the leathery membrane of its wing, punching a small hole in it that caused the demon to howl in anger. It started to swipe before the officer gave it a new command, causing it to simply pick her up and squeeze her in one of its massive hands. The others followed suit, one grabbing Marcus before another reached for me. I tried firing at its head, but my first shot missed, the second barely grazing one of the horns before I felt massive, scaled claws wrapping around my body. Immediately it squeezed, and I felt my breath rush from me as I fought for air. "Onward," Officer said, moving along the levitating rock path once more. The demons holding us took off, massive wings beating hot air into our faces that made it hard to breathe. As we passed over the rocky cliff, I could see what lay below, and it made me dread what our fate may be, even if we made it out of here alive. Miles and miles of pits full of fire and bodies, not dead, but writhing in agony. From my bird's-eye view, I could see that they were still alive, in whatever sense of that word that could mean down here at least. They were crawling over each other, some screaming in pain, others rocking in the fetal position. Every single one looked burnt, singed beyond recognition as more demons down below wandered amongst them, torturing at their leisure. Big ones with wings like the ones holding us, massive four-legged beasts like the one that killed Pitt, and even more that were just imps, small little things that looked like damned toddlers wandering among the burning bodies, poking at some with long staffs and giggling as they screamed in pain. I saw a couple of them gathered around one body, flaying off burnt flesh from the sinew underneath. The person it belonged to, staring up at the clouded sky with vacant eyes, mouth open in a perpetual scream, begging for its afterlife to end, begging for relief as they simply peeled more skin away. Even as it came off, I could see new skin growing over it that they just targeted again, laughing madly while they brought as much pain as possible to the tortured souls below. Worse than the images below me was the smell, a mix of burning, rotting flesh and the worst stench of sulfur I had ever had the misfortune of inhaling. I felt like I was going to choke, even as the demon was squeezing the damned life out of me, hard claws pressed into my ribcage, jostling me with every beat of its wings. After a few minutes, or hell, it could have been hours, I think I lost consciousness once or twice from the restricted airflow. We touched down on another rocky formation, the officer and Celine standing at the ready before a massive stone throne situated in the middle. The demons let us down, all three of us gasping for air as we fell to the stone ground beneath. As we looked up, we could see a Bon sitting on the throne nearby, though most of its head was missing. The right side of the face was relatively fine, but the left side was blown out, like a gunshot had gone right through it and taken out a lot of that side of the skull on top, complete with a missing left eye and brain matter falling out of the gaping hole. As we watched, the body stood, moving closer to us as it inspected. "Gifts for you, mein Führer." The officer bowed, stepping back and sweeping a hand towards us in presentation. It hit me then that this was him. Hitler, the goddamn architect of one of the worst atrocities in human history, standing before us in the pits of hell. His right eye shone with fire as he looked us over, inspecting each of us one by one as the demons pulled us to our feet. When he got to Vera, he put a hand on her face, caressing her cheek gently before moving on, poking Marcus in the belly as he looked at him. "We needed 4 for the king," he muttered, looking to the officer. "Yes, mein Führer. Unfortunately, one of them was killed during the descent from the surface. However, we do have her." He pointed to Celine now, who suddenly turned from stone-faced to anger. "No, you promised me, swore to me, that if I brought the last sacrifices, my daughter and I could go free." She began to shout, raising a hand to slap Hitler before a great roar sprang up from the fiery pits below. Hitler began to laugh. "Oh, I swore to you." He grinned, sinew exposed in the left side of his face, fragments of bone and teeth meshed into the skin. "I have sworn to only one since I have been here." The ground beneath us trembled, shaking as something moved. It only took moments to see it as it lumbered into view from the distance. A demon, larger than the others and towering high above the rocks we were standing on, stepped forward in the distance. It only took minutes for its great strides to reach us, eyes burning with millions of smaller flames, and a great maw that could swallow entire buildings whole if it so wished. The scales on it were massive, greater than anything I had ever seen. The sheer size of it almost made me want to shut my brain off for fear of what it could mean. "Behold, the great defiler, the Lord of Flies, he who will bring about our Fourth Reich on Earth," Hitler screamed, bowing before the massive demon. As he did, it began to speak. "Have you honored your part of this bargain?" God, it felt like the voice was inside my head, even though it was shaking the entire ground around me. I looked down, trying to get my balance as dizziness began to set in, noticing lines drawn on the ground in a massive circle before the stone throne. "The remaining sacrifices are here, my lord," Hitler said, still in a deep bow, daring not to look at the hulking demon before him. The great beast began to shrink down as he spoke, and my eyes barely believed it as he eventually stepped down onto the stone ground alongside us, an incredibly handsome man with flowing blonde hair, almost glowing with radiant light, as he stood before the feeble former ruler of the Third Reich. Hitler spoke again. "Have you already partaken of the virgin I gave you, Lord?" "She was adequate," Satan answered, looking us all over now before turning his eyes to Celine. "This is her mother?" "Indeed, my lord. This whore is the last of the sacrifices," he replied. "You son of a bitch!" Celine shouted, raising the gun that was still holstered at her side and firing off a shot at Satan. The bullet glanced off his skin like it was made of fucking titanium, with barely a reaction from him. He moved towards her, total calm on his face as he looked her from top to bottom. Vera nudged me then, nodding to the ground we were standing on. I realized there were marks etched in the stone, formed into a massive circle of runes, the focal point of the Hell Gate. "We need blood to activate it," she mouthed, taking care that none of the Nazis were looking. Satan was busy staring Celine down, now caressing a hand from her cheek down to her chest, staring at her with hunger. "Your child was delightful. Will you live up to that same feeling?" he asked, putting his mouth to her neck and taking a bite, drawing a slight bit of blood before leaning back and licking his lips, savoring it. I had half a hope that some of the blood would drop to the ground and let us activate the circle, but I knew it would take more than that. I slowly slid a knife from my belt, trying to be discreet about it, but the officer saw me, shouting to the demons around us. "9, stop them. Take their weapons and hold them down until the Great Lord is ready," Officer shouted, motioning for the demons still standing off to the side to take hold of us. Suddenly I was shoved to the ground from behind, the massive scaly claws pushing us down into the rocky surface, hard, almost squeezing the air from my lungs once more. "Now, what is it you desire from me in return for these sacrifices?" Satan asked Hitler. "I desire the earth, my lord, to reign for a millennia as the Fourth Reich," he said, kneeling in front of him, and bowing his head. I will prepare the world for your coming reign. Soak the oceans with the blood of those who are impure. Create great cities in your honor for the demons to rule. I will do whatever you ask of me. All I ask is for a sliver of power to do it with. So be it, Satan answered, waving him off without a care. Celine just stood there, looking to the ground, eyes welling with tears. "Where is my daughter?" she asked. "Are you not listening? Your daughter is dead. I used her for my own pleasure, then devoured her," Satan said, barely glancing back at her as he walked off. Celine only let out a choked sob, collapsing to the ground on her knees. Pressed to the floor, Vera and I were facing each other. I noticed her whispering something under her breath, but it took a minute to figure out what. Latin. She was chanting the rites to close the hell gate that was right beneath our feet, hoping that blood would spill on the circle from anywhere and complete the ritual. She just stared at me as she chanted, nodding briefly for me to do whatever I needed to in order to finish out our job. I nodded back, mind racing as I tried to figure out the best way to spill any kind of blood I could on the circle before the idea hit me. Deep breath in. Can't hesitate now, Harker. Open wide, stick your tongue out, and bite down hard. You've been through worse pain. It's much harder than I expected it to be, but after a couple of hard bites and working through the pain, I managed to get through it. For good measure, I sucked in my cheek and bit it too, getting a good amount of blood flowing that I then spat out onto the ground nearby. Vera kept chanting, a faint glow beginning to emanate from the circle as she grew louder. The officer noticed first, shouting for someone to stop her, but it was too late. Satan only looked at us as Hitler began to screech curses left and right, looking around for a weapon to try and kill Vera with. He stomped over, desperately attempting to stomp her, but was too late. As the Hellgate began to close, reality began to warp around us, driving the demons away while they screamed into the air, hot air beating from their wings. I stood, punching him in the injured side of his face and feeling his jawbone scrape my knuckles as Vera continued her ritual, the circle glowing ever brighter. Marcus stood, reaching for the pistol on the ground nearby that had been dropped, and fired off a shot at the officer to keep him at bay. Satan smiled, looking me in the eyes as blood dripped from my mouth. God damn, it hurt. But I've got to say it's not the worst thing that could have happened during all of this. You simply delay the inevitable. My reign will soon come, with or without these stooges, he said, looking at Hitler now. No, kill them, my liege. I have honored our bargain. Why would you let them get away? Hitler screamed, rushing at Satan now. The Dark Lord raised a hand, flicking his wrist and sending the Führer flying off into the fiery pits below. I will see you soon, I'm sure of it. Reality crumbled around us, the fiery pits fading into nothingness as the rocky ground phased in and out before finally being replaced by solid concrete. Halogen bulbs flickered above, suddenly, cold air replacing the hot, sulfur-fumed atmosphere around us as we were suddenly in the depths of the bunker. Celine and the officer were in the room with us. She was collapsed, sobbing in grief as the officer stared forward, Marcus holding a gun to his head. He put his hands up, trying to motion in surrender. "Still got those explosives?" I asked Marcus, though it comes out garbled, thanks to how mangled my mouth is now. He nodded, tilting his head towards the tack bag still on the ground nearby. I opened it, grabbing out a few blocks of C4. setting them up strategically around the room as the officer began to cry, begging for his life. When the last one was set, I grabbed the detonator, arming it with a loud beep. "Please, I can be of use. Spare me. Bring me to your commanders. I will tell them all I know." Officer was pleading, blubbering with fear while we went about our work. Vera and Marcus walked to the doorway, peering up the stairs to ensure there was nothing there. Celine just sat on the ground, staring at the officer with hatred in her eyes. I threw her a knife. "We're not letting you out of here alive, but I don't care what you do after we're gone," I said. The officer jumped at the knife on the ground, but didn't make it before Marcus fired off a shot, hitting him in the kneecap. One more round went off, hitting him in the opposite knee for good measure. "That's for Pitt." He spat on the officer before walking out of the room. Celine only looked at me before gently picking the knife off the ground, holding it up to see the edge shine in the light. Vera and I walked out, closing the door behind us as the officer began to scream. We made the walk back to the surface, reaching the cold, frozen wasteland, and to our surprise, the now extinguished wreckage of our plane. We huddled inside it for shelter from the elements before pressing the button on the detonator, a loud explosion shaking the ground beneath us as the small building, the only sign that there was anything below the surface here, began to smoke and catch fire. Hours passed sitting in the wreckage before a plane flew over. Vera and Marcus went outside, waving them down and firing off flares to get their attention, as if they were needed with the smoking pile of debris still burning deep under the ground. After it landed, a pilot and a couple of agents greeted us, running forward and bringing us onto the plane, explaining that they had a tracker on it in case of an emergency like this. We're heading back to the collective for debrief now, though I can't say I'm eager to do much talking. I'm definitely putting in for vacation time after this. Maybe I'll see if Vera wants to join me. I would say we've earned it, at the very least. Story number 2. I never met my cousin Chris. The family didn't talk about him much, and the only memories I have of him are through dusty, candid photos on my aunt's walls and posed Christmas and Easter pictures that mark my grandparents' halls and mantel. He disappeared when I was 3, gone in the night, leaving remnants of a boy in my aunt's solemn house. During Christmas, my mom told my aunt about my newfound interest in VHS and camcorders. When Mom told her, Aunt Janelle's eyes went misty and nostalgic, and I realized that what I first thought was a touch too much eggnog was a shared interest with my cousin. "Chris loved filming when he was your age," she'd said, voice choked up with emotion. "Your Uncle Don and I got a camcorder one year and, God, he and his friends, they filmed everything." Her head was shaking as she went on, talking about all the bike tricks and attempted parkour and other preteen buffoonery captured forever by Chris and his friends. When she'd called Mom today, I expected the usual neighborhood gossip and middle-aged shit talk. But Aunt Janelle said she'd found Chris's camera. She asked if I wanted to come and see the videos, to get to know my unknown cousin in a way I hadn't before. She left me with the boxes in their basement, and I settled in front of the couch as the first clip played. The usual still form of my cousin takes up the old TV. He's smiling, laughing at something his filming friend had said before the camera rolled. The next few minutes are Chris and his friends goofing around, shoving each other, attempting skateboarding tricks, lighting firecrackers. The 4 of them are 13 or 14, and it's easy to see the similarities between them and my group of friends. The next few hours pass in a blur of clips. It's almost addictive, watching my cousin and his friends, Jay, Alex, and Marcus, do stupid things together in the concrete monotony of my town's bridges and underpasses. One tape, labeled 13-11-98, opens on a different scene. Instead of a tunnel, a road, or even someone's yard, it's the woods. The camera quality makes the probably golden woods look yellow, and the shadows of trees long and foreboding. For a few seconds, it's only a pair of worn sneakers pushing through piles of dead leaves. "Jay, you dick," is the first audible thing over white noise and the crunching of leaves underfoot. The camera flicks upward, just in time to see Chris shove Jay into a pile of leaves. Jay gets up and shoves back, and they start to wrestle as Alex's voice cuts in. "Guys, come on," Alex says from behind the camera. "Stop it. We have to get there before dark." Chris and Jay separate, laughing as they both shake leaves off their jackets. There are a few more minutes of quiet hiking intercut with jokes before the trees thin out, and the camera focuses on the old quarry. It pans across the gash in the land, the sun painting the walls as the lowest parts darken. It's silent for a moment before Jay speaks again. "Nice hole in the ground. Top 10, honestly." The camera flicks toward him as Jay snags a rock from the ground and hurls it into the quarry's depths. The camera tracks the stone as it falls, static taking over the view as the zoom feature loses focus of the rock. The static ends, and Chris and Jay's banter takes over the audio. They're jokingly shoving each other closer to the edge before more rocks fall into the quarry's shady bottom. The next few minutes are just the four of them fucking around, climbing trees and wrestling around as the surrounding woods grow darker and darker. They throw more rocks, but instead of fading into the darkness, the rocks fall until abruptly blinking out into the blackness of the quarry like shooting stars. Despite the fuzzing audio and footage, the clip is fun to watch. It's easy to imagine myself alongside them, throwing rocks around and goofing off. It's dusk when someone suggests heading back, the dying sun turning everything more sinister and alien as it lengthens shadows. The video's already bad quality seems poorer in the dark, every shadow swimming with dark, snowy spots. More joking ensues as they turn, the trees thickening again as the woods consume the camera's view. More walking and talking. "I swear, Dana's been coming on to me all week," Jay says. Alex is filming him from behind, taking in Jay and Chris's backs as they walk. "Sure she has," Chris says dryly. "Just like Emily is in science. It's not my fault. All the ladies want a piece of the..." White noise obscures the audio for a moment, and dancing static overtakes the TV screen. And the static slowly fizzles out, and when the camera's view clears, it's on Marcus instead of Chris and Jay. He's looking around the darkened trees, head moving in rapid motions like a bird. He slowly turns back to the group, squinting against a flashlight's beam as someone behind the camera turns one on. "Did you hear that?" Marcus asks. "Hear what?" Chris says. "I think it was wind, dude." "No," Marcus says quickly, whirling back around. "It was like..." Marcus's voice fades off as he goes almost unnaturally still. "Like what?" Jay asks. Marcus doesn't respond. "Marcus, what did it sound like?" Jay asks. Leaves crunch as Jay walks closer, gripping Marcus's arm to turn him around. "Did it sound like your mom when I..." Jay goes silent as he turns Marcus back around. Marcus's eyes are wide and unfocused. Blood that looks vividly red even in the washed-out view of the camera drips from his nose, slowly welling up over his upper lip. Marcus gasps suddenly, his eyes fluttering against the flashlight's harsh white beam. His eyes flick around, first to Jay, then to the flashlight. Then he stares directly into the camera. The blood from his nose drips down his lip, and his 1,000-yard stare feels like it's boring into me. An icy shiver runs down my spine at the sight, and Marcus's eyes stare unblinkingly at me. "What?" Marcus asks slowly. "How's it going?" comes from behind me, and I spin around with a flinch. Aunt Janelle is smiling widely, holding a plate of pizza rolls. Good," I say after a second. "It's going good. It's pretty fun, seeing what they did." Aunt Janelle hums happily and sets the plate on the table behind me. "Oh yeah, my Chris and his friends were great. Best boys I knew." Her eyes go misty again as she stands, the dying light of the sun outside highlighting her graying hair. She stills for a moment, looking down. "They were something," she murmurs. Her eyes move onto me again, and she smiles a little. "Well," she says, "I'll leave you to it." The closing of the basement door signals her exit, and when I turn again, Marcus's 1,000-yard stare almost takes me by surprise. I resume the clip and settle back down, the scorching cheese of the pizza roll sticking to the roof of my mouth. "What?" Marcus asks again. "Are you okay?" Chris asks from behind the camera. "Yeah. You got all weird, dude," Jay says. Marcus nods, wiping at the blood from his nose like it's a second thought as he turns and resumes walking. "Yeah," he says faintly. "Yeah." "Well, what did it sound like?" Alex asks, the camera shaking as he jogs after Marcus. "What?" "That noise," Alex says. "What?" Marcus repeats. "The noise," Jay yells, more leaves crunching as he runs towards Marcus. "You said it sounded like something. Then you got all weird." The clip's audio goes fuzzy for a moment, and the visual quickly follows. The visuals return, and the camera shakes as Alex turns around. "What?" Static overtakes Alex's words as the camera turns to Chris. He's also looking around, the flashlight in his hands flickering and sending sporadic bursts of light at trees and the ground. The audio clarity sharply returns right as Jay yells, but the view continues to shake as Alex rapidly moves. "What the fuck?" The camera spins, trees and the grayness of the woods blurring past, before it abruptly stops. It's on the ground now, at an angle as it leans against a rock or something. Dirt smudges the lens, and the dark woods cause part of the image to look static and swimming. However, my cousin and his friends appear somewhat clearer. Jay is shoving Marcus back, but instead of friendly and teasing, it's harsh and angry. "Did you fucking grab me?" Jay yells, Marcus spilling to the ground as Jay pushes him again. "Chill out," Chris yells, running into frame and pulling Jay back. Alex's boot enters the frame's edge as he moves forward, stopping short of the other three. "He was grabbing at me and shit," Jay yells, shoving Chris off. "Seriously, what the fuck?" "Guys," Alex's voice cuts in, but Jay interrupts it. "Stop being all weird. Guys, fucking what? Did you hear that?" Alex's voice is quiet and hesitant as he turns to look at Jay, Chris, and the now standing Marcus. "Hear what?" Chris asks. "Like someone running," Alex whispers harshly. "Like not one of us." They descend into hurried whispers, Jay looking frustrated as Alex and Chris get closer and quieter, and Marcus looking around hesitantly. They separate with a sigh from Chris as he walks out of view, coming back with the flashlight that's still weakly flickering. Alex picks up the camera, staring into the lens and carefully wiping the dirt with his sleeve. Jay and Marcus are whispering over Alex's shoulder, as he messes with the camcorder. The unfocused woods behind them are still static and bubbling. Jay scratches at his chin as they talk, eyes rolling as Alex's magnified eyes peer into the camera and me. Alex spins suddenly, the camera jolting as he turns to look into the woods behind him, and the view erupts into static. The movement makes me jump, and I blink rapidly, trying to calm back down. Rewinding the clip a few seconds, it looks like Alex turns to nothing, only Jay and Marcus arguing. I slowed the clip, locked on the dark, distorted woods as they move in slow motion. A slow gray movement peeks out among the trees, but it honestly looks like the camera is just picking up movement in the trees. By the time the static ends, they've resumed walking. The camera, now with shitty night vision on, is angled on Alex's feet as he walks, trudging through piles of leaves and debris. No one is talking now. The camera twitches up a bit, showing Chris and his flashlight leading the pack. Someone mumbles something, Jay, maybe, and he's quickly shushed. Suddenly they pause. The camera flicks up, showing Marcus looking into the trees behind them, white and green and ghostly in the night vision. Wind ruffles his hair, and Chris's flashlight highlights his face as he turns, whispering, "Run." Then it's just leaves and the ground and static. The camera swings every time Alex moves his arm, showing the upside-down woods, black now, interspersed with distorted gray. The audio goes into static, then the view too. "Keep, go." Then, "Who?" Then, "What?" More distorted noise. There's a high, sharp noise, then a brief view of something gray and long, and then a slam. The camera slowly focuses again, and Chris is locking a door, the sliding glass door in the kitchen that leads into Aunt Janelle's backyard. The night vision is almost blinding in the kitchen's light, highlighting Chris's dirty knees and wide, rolling eyes. "What the fuck?" he says. "What the... how? Marcus? Downstairs, downstairs now!" Jay yells, and the camera turns down again, and they stumble down the basement stairs. The door slams, and it sounds nearly like it's happening now. Like if I were to turn around, I could see my cousin and his friends sprinting down the stairs. A noise snaps me out of the trance that the video put me in. The room is dark now, darker than it seems like it should be for this time at night. The only thing giving light is the green-white glow of the night vision on the TV. Another noise from the TV ropes me back in. Jay and Chris are crouching beside the couch, heads snapping around to look at the windows. Glancing over my shoulder, I can see where they'd be, right between the couch and the bookshelf. Marcus is nowhere to be seen. The night vision is off, and the only noises are the creaks of the house, their panting breaths, and the quiet popping of static. "What did it do to Marcus?" Alex asks, his voice a rasp behind the camera. "I don't know," Chris mumbles. "The flashlight stopped and it grabbed him," Jay breathes. "Do you think it followed? Did you close the gate?" The hair on the back of my neck prickles, my breathing speeding up to match theirs. The high noise might have been Marcus's scream, but what is it? There's a thud over the video, drawing my attention back. Chris's neck snaps around to look at the window above the TV. The camera follows. More bubbling, static-filled darkness. Then, a slow blur of gray. Someone gasps, someone stares, and the camera falls again. It's quickly picked up and refocused on the window. "No," Chris says. "No." Silence flows through the speakers, the popping of static accompanying it. A light flicks on outside the window, just as the light in the basement flicks off. It illuminated the top of the TV, then the rug, then the tips of Alex's sneakers and Chris's legs. It slowly gets brighter, then lights up like the sun, bathing everything in the video in a cold light. Someone screams, and Alex frantically scoots backwards, dropping the camera as Chris grabs a bat and approaches the window. He's yelling, but static overtakes the audio as the light abruptly flicks off. A shaking flashlight beam turns on, skating over the couch and slowly up Chris's back. It's quaking as it slowly climbs the wall and hits the window. It glints off the glass, blinding the camera. A car. Alex mumbles. Maybe. A massive gray face takes up the window. Big, black, blank eyes sitting in its oval skull as a greasy palm slams into the window. The camera falls again, and I jolt back as the TV abruptly turns off. The house is unnaturally still. No Aunt Janelle upstairs, not even the rattle of pipes in the walls. My panting breaths seem like an intrusion, too loud and unnatural. I stand on shaking legs, looking around the dark room at the alien bumps of furniture. Slowly turning, nothing is out of the ordinary. The room is silent. A slow exhale leaves me, and I turn back to the TV. In the window above it, a greasy, three-fingered handprint is pressed against the glass. The TV turns back on, showing a crooked view of the empty basement as a white light outside flicks on through the window. Story number 3. There are certain things about nature that are both fascinating and terrifying. A bear can smell you from over 10 miles away. A sturgeon can grow as long as a car, and a cornered prey animal can experience a burst of energy to stay alive from a hunting predator. But the one I find most daunting is the fact that no species of animal dominates the earth more than insects. In any one given area of the world, it is a ratio for millions of bugs to any one community. And let me tell you, there is nothing more haunting than seeing that for yourself. A couple months ago, I saw the first one. As I was getting out of my car to head inside after a long day of work, I saw on the siding of the house was a strange-looking insect. I knew we normally got the standard little pests around our property: mosquitoes, flies, cicadas, ants, centipedes, etc., since we lived so close to the woods. But this one was unlike any I've ever seen before. It was a pale, white dot, vaguely hairy on the exoskeleton, minuscule black markings, covering the small pill-shaped body shell. 6-minute spindly legs stuck out from the sides, and from what I only could guess was the head. I saw a pair of 2 red pinprick eyes, their shape almost similar to a bee's and a fly's mixed together. For a little bit, it just crawled slowly along the house's side, and I had finished getting everything out for the night. And right as I began locking my car, it flitted off into the early evening air. So quickly that it was past the tree line by the time I got to the door to head inside. And that was the end of it. I had a normal enough night after that, and went to bed. As I got up early the next morning, I opened the blinds in the kitchen to watch the sun go up as I had breakfast. The morning sky was hazy with a few clouds, and I went to take a shower. As I got back to the kitchen, I saw something on the window. In the dim lighting, I couldn't see it too well, and my glasses I had left in my room. I stepped a bit closer to the window, squinting. It looked like some kind of bug had landed, but I couldn't tell if it was some kind of fly or moth or something. I quickly went to grab my phone left behind in the bathroom and pointed it at the glass. I snapped a photo and a bright light blinded me. I cursed at myself when I forgot to turn the flash off. But while I had blinked spots out of my eyes, I saw the bug on the window open some kind of shell on its back to fly away. As I watched it do so, in shockingly slow motion, I found myself surprised. A pair of wings had emerged from the bug's back that even in the slow, crawling sunrise stood out. A mixing of dark and light spots and swirls decorated the insect's wings in strange, almost shape-like patterns, like a Rorschach picture was painted onto the surface of the wing. I went back to my room, put my glasses on, and took a look at the picture. While most of the photo was a bright ball of light, I did manage to catch it. It was the same type of bug that I had seen the other day. The disbelief was quick, but it made sense. Some insects were more active at night, and I had no control what bugs were coming onto the property. As long as nothing happened, it would be all good. Over the next few days, I would see one or two of those bugs around the outside property of the house, on the windows, on the porch, on some plants that I kept outside, on the mailbox, and on the driveway close to my car. It was very small at first, barely noticeable. That was perfectly fine by me. But it wasn't long before things got different. A couple of weeks after seeing the first one, I'd arrived home late in the day, close to sunset, and the sight that greeted me was an absolute shock. Bugs, dozens of them, all over the siding of my house directly facing the driveway. They were crawling and flapping their wings in place as they rested on the wall. The sight made my skin crawl, as if the imaginary scenario of myself being covered in so many bugs had manifested into reality. The idea of being outside with those things made me shiver, but I shook it off, opening the door and staring into the window as I shut it. From the reflection, I saw some of the bugs had jumped off the house to flit in the air for a moment before settling back down. I locked up my car, and at the noise, the bugs began to fly. In a vague grouping, they rose into the sky, vanishing out of sight into the shadows of the woods, as if swallowed by a massive void. That night was when things really began to settle in. After the sun went down, I had this strange feeling I was being watched. The neighborhood I live in is pretty isolated. Everyone has a good amount of space between one another, so I never had to worry about anyone nosy. But the whole night, no matter what I did as a distraction, I felt a pair of eyes were on me the entire time. For the next month or so, they showed up a lot more. Those minuscule numbers of earlier days had tripled. They could cover an entire wall if they wanted to. They hung out on the sides, the porch frame, the bathroom window, even covering the back door light to the point of completely blacking it out. It was so sudden it made my head spin, and there seemed to be hundreds of them a week, to the point that I began to notice little details I never saw on them before. Each one had a different appearance, shade of red in the eyes, range of sizes, and the wing patterns, each one distinct and unique. I did notice one thing about them, though. They seemed to be repulsed by noise, whether it be me sneezing, the car door slamming, the horn on accident, or even the TV being loud enough inside. This made keeping my house creepy bug-free, and to help put my mind at ease. I knew they were bugs, and I, 1,000,000 times larger and stronger, could easily take them out. But the eyes on those things, they were unnerving. I've never been one to be afraid of bugs, but something about these things give me a bad feeling. I didn't even know what species they were, since internet searches and books from the library were no help, so I have no idea how I can get rid of them. I just kept telling myself it would be fine. I had my workarounds, and they're working pretty well so far. I kept a bug spray by the front and back door, just in case. Everything took a nosedive a week ago, when they finally got inside. I had actually had the chance to come home early that day, and the sight of my house insect-free gave me a relieved pause that left me at ease. I made it back before they got here, so I can spend my time in my nice, pest-protected home. As I locked up my car, looking at my phone, playing some music, a small shape fluttered in front of me. I look up. My heart dropped. A bug had landed. One. And it wouldn't be long before more came. I heard a faint buzzing sound from the woods, and from the tops of the trees, I saw a swarm of insects, enormous and foreboding, had emerged. The swarm looked as large as a bus, and the noise it made was rattling my very skull. It sounded like static, but like it was being warbled somehow, trying to make out any coherent noise it could. I didn't waste any time. I bolted for the door, scrambling to get the key into the lock. I had only a little bit, and I can already heard the screaming static getting closer. A scattering of shadows ran across my skin as my nervous hands began to shake and dropped the keys onto the ground. I went to grab them as fast I could, but it was too late. The bugs had gathered around me in a second, buzzing all around me in a noise so loud my ears hurt, and I could feel them landing on me, biting and crawling up and down my skin and trying to get into my clothes. I swatted at as many as I could, smacking myself to the point I knew I'd have bruises later, and frantically getting the door open. I threw the door open and slammed it shut with my shoulder behind me. In my panic, I shook myself down of any bugs still on me, stomping them in the ground and spraying them down, repeatedly, until I was sure they were all dead. I didn't see any still moving, and I was sure I got them all off me, their bites singing but the source of them dead. I could only be relieved for a second before I felt something itchy in my ear. I felt around my ear for a second and felt a small bump. I ran to the bathroom, and my fear was realized. One of them had gotten into my ear. I freaked, racing to grab the tweezers. I clamped them down onto the little thing and pulled. But it didn't move. The bug had stayed where it was, and from the inside of my ear I could feel those tiny legs scratching my ear canal, surprisingly shallow, like miniature thorns. But I needed to get it out, because if they were acting like that outside, I don't want them anywhere inside. My fingers burned as I clamped that bug, hard enough to kill any normal one, and trying to get it out of me. But it wouldn't let go, as if the harder I pulled at it, the more it held firm. My ear was screaming, in pain, and I knew by then I was bleeding from my ear. But I didn't care. I just had to get it out, and fast. My fingers were trembling from the force of my grip, and as I tried to twist it, the tweezers flew out of my grip, landing in the sink, and the bug was free. Before I could even grab them, I felt my ear feeling filled up, shoving deep into the canal and trying to go deeper. I screamed, the sensation feeling akin to a nail being shoved into my ear, and no matter what I stuck in there to kill it, nothing worked. I grew so overwhelmed by pain I actually blacked out. When I woke up it was night, pitch black, and still. For a brief moment I had no memory of what happened, but the afterburn deep within my ear had quickly reminded me. I sat up, a bit off kilter and dizzy from what I prayed wouldn't be permanent ear damage. But even through the pain I could hear something, a soft litany of what I assumed were the sounds of air moving through the vents, or maybe the wind outside. But the more I listened, I couldn't deny it. They were voices, small, far away, and blending together, but they were voices, and the more I listened to them, the more scared I felt. "Let us in. We can see you. You can't hide in there forever." I got up to quickly make sure that all of the windows and blinds were drawn, but the complete darkness of the house made it impossible to move around in. I couldn't see any, and I didn't know what happened to my phone between me running inside to the moment I woke up. I felt around my way to the kitchen and found a flashlight on top of the fridge. I clicked the light on, bright LED, nearly making me go blind, and nearly screamed at what I saw. In front of me was the window to the back of the property, and all over the glass, in the middle of the night, were hundreds of bugs, white bodies crawling in clusters, and their red eyes reflecting back like the taillights of cars, all of them looking at me. I didn't know what else to do. They were so many. You couldn't even see around the edges of them, and I was suddenly very scared of being here for the night. I flicked my flashlight up and down the window, trying to see for any hole to the outside, when a small few began to leave. Where I pointed the flashlight, there would be 2 or 3 that would fly off, and before those gaps could be filled by more bugs, moonlight streamed into the house. This gave me an idea, and I ran to all of the rooms and turned on all of the lights, lamps, overheads, decor. It didn't matter. I didn't stop until I had all the blinds open and every bright light turned on. That had gotten the ones clear from the windows. From inside, I watched as thin tendrils of bug clouds had vanished into the darkness. But I knew there were more, in places where the light couldn't reach them. On the roof, on the sides, in the gutter, anywhere they can crawl on. From outside, I can still hear them. I can hear the bugs talking to me, threatening me, saying they would follow me, saying they will hurt, kill, and use my corpse for their eggs. I just holed in my room, sleeping with the lights on. The next morning, they were gone, and I didn't stay long enough to see when they would come back. I packed a bag for a few nights and ran outside to drive away from the insect house of hell. I got a room for a motel, and that has been where I've been staying for the last week. I'm not sure what I am going to do next. My thoughts on calling an exterminator are a bit mixed. I didn't want to live with them there forever, but I wasn't sure if getting another person involved with those things would be a bad idea. I have thought about going into the woods where they fly off to hide during the day, but the idea would surely result in something bad. I don't know what to do. I've been relaying this story to everyone I know who can hopefully give me a place to stay in order to stay safe and away from the bugs. I'm going to hold out for a little while longer, and hopefully I can last long enough to get them out of my life before they find a way back into mine. And soon, because I am fairly certain I heard my name being whispered outside my motel door. Story number 4. There were never any construction crews before it appeared. Nothing to indicate that people had worked on it or that it was planned. Where there once been a lot, there was now a house. But this house was not like the ones that surrounded it. Our street was not a place where the populace thrived and extravagance ran through. We were modest in our living quarters. Our one-story homes more than sufficed. But this house towered over us, casting a shadow over our sleepy town. Its design imitated a mansion more than presented as one. Staring at the windows only revealed them to be glass panes attached to the brick wall, with no way to look inside. The side door was attached to what was supposed to be a chimney, causing fire to jump out whenever it opened. Catching the garage door opening revealed it to open sideways, much like the front. The more you stared, the more nonsensical the building became. Our cul-de-sac was tight-knit, but welcoming. Our neighbors were the first to attempt to welcome these new guests. They had stopped by our house before walking over. My memories of 30 years ago failed to recall specifics, but they invited my parents to their surprise housewarming. My parents denied. Our neighbors then left to go to the house at the end. They never came back. The next day, where my neighbor's house once been, a sign reading "For Occupation" stood on its ground. It lay empty for weeks before another of house came in its place, bringing with it new occupants. What can I say of those occupants? My parents never wanted me to come close to them, for like the houses they inhabited, they seemed like imitation rather than flesh. Their white teeth always shone in a smile that was just wide enough to cross over from friendly to creepy. Their skin, it crossed the barrier of what could be considered pale into almost ghost white. And their mannerisms, even their bizarre appearances, would have been excused if not for the way they acted. Their speech sounded strung together, like the words they spoke belonged to different sentences spoken in different ways. When outside, sometimes they would just walk around in a circle, or they'd start mismatching chores like painting the grass or using a lawnmower to vacuum their car. Other times, they would just stand and stare. Sometimes I felt that they were staring at me. My parents forbid me from going anywhere near that house, which, after a while, soon became houses. I heeded their demands not out of obedience to them, but out of fear for my own safety. And although many neighbors and friends went, say, towards that house, getting replaced not soon after, we stood our ground. I remember that, when my mother was still on the town council, major chances had come about due to the house. Our schools, infrastructure, and other utilities suffered major cuts by the mayor, all so they could reallocate funds somewhere else. They would shy away when you asked where the money was going. My mother was the only opposition on SACE, the council, to this change, but was quickly outvoted by the other members of the council. I sat in one of those meetings once, when my father was busy and couldn't look after me. I saw he scream on deaf ears and cry out every word of her plea, but everything she did was dismissed in a monotone voice. I caught for a glimpse what the mayor and council were paying for. As Mom stormed out of the hall, the members gathered in a meeting room next to the main entrance. My eyes caught what I assume now to be the budget chart of the city, and taking up what I believed to have been almost 70% of it was just something called House. The council disbanded soon after. Although the vote was not unanimous, the other members just never showed back up to meetings, leaving my mother to have to deal with everything alone. Soon, however, the mayor personally showed up to fire her. At that point, I hardly recognized the man anymore. Ever since he reallocated the funds, he started getting paler, his smile more toothy, his grin growing wider. I could sense he was becoming more like the imitators at that house. My mother cried that day, that night, and the next morning. I tried to console her, but she pushed me away. Before I left, I heard her mumbling something. That wasn't my friend anymore. Now that my mother was without a job now, my father was the sole breadwinner for our family. But it wasn't as if his place was free of that house's influence. He told us night after night about how those things have picked up jobs at his place of work. They didn't seem to even do anything productive, other than to type random letters on a notepad, or even resting their head on their computer. Yet, despite everything, they were praised by upper management all the time, even promoted faster than my father ever was. Soon enough, even his new boss was one of those imitators, as he called them. This continued for years. My mother searched for a new job, but each one was either run by an imitator or rejected her for her criminal record. My mother, who never so much as stole a candy bar and would never hurt a fly, now had a criminal record. I inferred it had something to do with the council, but I couldn't know for certain. This had also made me an outcast, as my former friends turned on me for not bowing down to these new invaders. They called me names and pushed me around while they got showered in riches and the latest toys, accessories, and other forms of opulence. All the while, they were oblivious to their own transformation. It wasn't until college where I managed to escape from town. I went somewhere far away where they couldn't follow me. Driving out seemed almost like a nightmare. Each resident of those houses and those who had given in were all outside on their lawns. I could feel their eyes on me, so I tried not to stare back. Once I had left, I felt something I hadn't since before those things came. Relief. I've had a normal life from that point onwards. I've started a family, made friends, and found a career in history, a passion of mine. For now, I've been able to have a pretty normal life. I have only been back to my childhood town once, though, and with my hindsight, I realized that was a grave mistake. I had gotten a call from my mother. Apparently, things have gotten even worse for them since I left. The house have started to grow. Some even started to connect. My mother even says she can feel a heartbeat when walking near one. I knew I couldn't leave them there, so I rushed to get them as fast as I could. Going back, I found the most unusual surprise. The signs that had once displayed the name of the town only said one thing: welcome home. I knew I really shouldn't have tried to go further, but I didn't want my parents to be left alone in that hell. Going in, I saw what my mother was talking about. The houses looked like what you'd think a child would design after asking about his dream home. Everyone was taller, with rooms sticking out of each other, and even being diagonal at some points. Everyone was outside, staring at me that same way, just like when I left. I ignored them. My parents were my top priority, after all. Coming to my cul-de-sac, I saw something I had only ever read about in science fiction before. It was the house from all those years ago, but now it looked almost like an organ. It had what I could only describe as tendrils sticking out of it, connecting the other houses that looked even more grotesque. It could see every branch of it moving, beating almost like a heart. But that didn't hit me as hard as when I saw my former home. It was completely covered in those tendrils. Not an inch of the house even showed. I tried calling my parents. Maybe they had gotten out before whatever had happened. My hope, fading with each ring, eventually died out when I saw the tendrils start to contract. This thing had trapped my parents inside, and now it was slowly suffocating them. There was no doubts about it now. I know others that would have been braver and tried to ram into these tendrils to save their loved ones. Unfortunately, I am not one of them. I drove away like a coward, right then and there. I let my parents die, without a fight. No one tried to stop me from leaving, and got to my house after a long and arduous drive. I still blame myself for what happened. If only I had thought to get them out of there before the house took revenge. If only I tried to fight back against this monster, maybe they would still be here. I cried, just like my mother did all those years ago. After the service, I started up a habit of driving around the whole town now. My wife thinks I'm getting paranoid, but I know what I saw, and I know what happens if you don't get away fast enough. I don't know if whatever that house is has started to spread, but the first time I see one of those monstrosities enter my town, I am protecting my family and moving as far away as we can. Hell, I've even started getting concerned now, as one of my friends showed me some vacation photos with one of those things in the background. Just knowing they're spreading is putting me on edge. But what concerns me even more were the faces of those outside the house. They had the same exact faces as my mother and father, and they were looking right at the camera. Story number 5. The other day I met this kid who's in seminary. He's doing his residency, or whatever they call it, at the church my wife and I attend. She wanted to get more involved, so we wound up at an event with the whole congregation. She mingled. I stood in the back. I'm quiet. That's how I came to meet the seminary kid. He approached me while I was back there alone. I think he somehow sensed I had wisdom for him, that I had been in his shoes not too long ago. I say this because we were soon talking about the Bible, then philosophy, and then dread. My 3 greatest understandings. But the more he went on, the more troubling it all became. I understood what was happening, to an extent, and it was troubling. These are dangerous things to talk about, I told him, half joking. I invited him to go fishing. We can talk more about it then. That's not too uncommon around here. We live in a gray fishing town, and fishing is indeed a setting where wisdom is exchanged. It has been that way for a long time. As long as man itself, I think. I'm more of a houndsman, but I do know how to fish. Of course I do. I just don't care for the sport of it anymore. Nothing against fly fishing, but I prefer a cane pole. It's simpler. All of this sounds irrelevant, but it's exactly what I was planning on telling the seminary kid. It would all tie into the moral of the story. The cane pole would be both real and metaphorical, avoiding the complex when unnecessary. Simpler. But when fishing day came, he was grouchy, quite clearly. I thought he might lighten up while we crafted our cane poles, but he did not. His spirit was in a quagmire of despair. We tied up the lines, got the worms soaking, and were quick to start talking again. But my planned speech broke apart fast. He really started going off. Okay, so now I'll try to explain what was going on in the kid's head, but you'll have to go with me here. You might call his ailment academic heresy. It is heresy that is birthed through research. The kid had read so thoroughly into the Bible that he started thinking it was all a lie. When people like me and him get interested in first-century Christianity, we often get interested in the Christianities that didn't survive. The lost heresies. We know a few of them. The Gnostics are particularly famous, though scholars now argue that the various groups lumped under that name were too different to be called the same thing. There's also the Marcionites, and whatever community wrote the Gospel of Thomas, the Ebionites. Anyway, from a historical perspective, heretical 1st and 2nd century Christianities are deeply fascinating. But it's tragically common for young people who gain an interest in these subjects to convince themselves they've uncovered some ancient conspiracy, that one of these heresies was actually the true Christianity. They claim to back it up with textual and material evidence. That's what the seminary kid was up to. I suspected it from the beginning and had a speech plan to ease into it gently. But it failed, truly. When I did finally get a chance to interrupt his antics, I tried to explain what was happening without hurting his pride. That's not always easy. I told him these heretical texts are more fun than the New Testament, but less historically accurate. There's near universal agreement, even among secular scholars, that Paul's 7 undisputed letters and the Synoptic Gospels are the most accurate depictions of the historical Jesus. Of course, He brought up the hexing of the true saints. And of course, that was his main focus. Okay, so there are a lot of heretical texts. I already brought up the Gospel of Thomas. But the hexing of the true saints is one literally never mentioned in academic circles, but cannot seem to be fully erased from all the dark caverns of the internet. Most scholars don't even know about it, and the ones that do won't admit they do. Let me explain some of the history here. All present-day Christian churches originate from what historians call the Proto-Orthodox Church. So the Catholic Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, all forms of Protestantism, are descendants of the Proto-Orthodox Church. Now, at the time of the Proto-Orthodox Church, there were other Christian churches that did not survive. They were silenced, and the Proto-Orthodox Church's beliefs became dominant. These beliefs also happen to have the best understanding of the historical Jesus. The hexing of the true saints is some internet-born document that claims to be authentic. Its fictional narrative purports that the Proto-Orthodox Church, although of course that's not the name they used, crafted a hex, curse, jinx, spell with a demon, I've forgotten its name, and used it to condemn all opposing Christians to nod. The land of confusion, the heretics, or the true saints, LOL, were sent into a living state where they could never quite make sense of things and could only remember life in fragments that did not connect. They were confused until death. Those hexed could be identified by a scar on their heart, a scar formed from fire that does not burn but bewitches, or so the phony text says. I had been in the seminary kid's shoes before, and so I wanted to steer him away from this kind of thinking. It pains me that I couldn't keep things calm. We started arguing. We were throwing lines of scripture at each other, saying things like criterion of multiple independent source attestation, and what have you. I was never actually mad at him, but he got mad at me. At some point, we hit a stalemate and just stood there in silence, boots in the water, holding our cane poles, sometimes swatting away gnats. Then he said, I'm gonna go take a piss, which, mind you, was strange coming from a kid training to be a priest. They're just people like you and me, Catholic priests and their students, but they don't talk like that. Point is, I could see his faith leaving him. I could see it like the last shiver of smoke from a cold match. Not just his faith, his reasoning, his common sense, his ability to not always feel like something was off, though he could never quite put his finger on what it was. He would be lost forever. Now, I think this next part was a sign from God, but I don't quite understand it. While he was pissing, his cane pole got yanked from the grass. Thankfully, it got snagged on some thicket, and I had time to stomp down on it. I started hollering that he had a fish, but he didn't answer. I asked if he wanted me to pull it in. Still nothing. He couldn't have been that far. I acted on instinct and pulled it in. It was a decent base. If it weren't on such heavy line, it might have broken it. It was a good fish, and we were catching nothing that day. And right when he goes to take a piss, he catches it. A good one. This happens a lot to fishermen. It's almost a cliche now. But this time it felt like more than happenstance. But I don't understand it. So the kid never came back. I waited. I called for him and I looked around a little, but he was gone. Somehow I knew that he was just walking home, so I didn't panic exactly. I packed everything up, drove off, and about a mile down the road, there he was, walking home. It was awkward, but I couldn't just drive right past him, you know. so I rolled down the window and asked if he was okay. He said he was. I knew he would say that. I asked if he wanted a ride. He said no. I knew he would say that too. I offered. There was nothing more to do. I told myself maybe the long walk would help him. Maybe it would give him time to reflect on what I'd said. Because I had warned him. He could not say that he wasn't warned. But now there was this other awkward part. I went to confession and told our parish priest about the incident. It's uncomfortable bringing your priest into your personal drama, especially when the two of you are close, and especially if the person in question is a seminarian doing his residency, or whatever they call it, at his church. But I had to tell him. It sounds like tattletaling, but it was not. This was a serious matter, and I had seen the consequences. I wanted to help the kid, but then the priest stopped me halfway through my explanation, saying, "Wait, sorry, who are you referring to? That kid in seminary." "Which kid in seminary?" "The one who was here helping out." "When?" "These past few weeks." "What did he look like?" "Well," I said, "I can't really remember." The priest sighed. I said, "I met him at that event. Lots of people were there. My wife met him." He said, "Michael, we haven't hosted a seminarian in years." I chuckled a little. "You don't have a wife? You've never had a wife?" I couldn't seem to respond. He said, "I hope it isn't you, Michael, who is having these ideas again. A metaphor for yourself. Because as we have warned you, they come with serious consequences." He reminded me of how tempting it can be for a young man to get interested in the historical Jesus. He starts reading about the Q source, Paul's 7 undisputed letters, the criterion of dissimilarity. Then he finds some heretical text, something called the hexing of the true saints, or whatever dramatic title its author gave it, that they can't quite get rid of for some fucking reason. It always slithers its way back. And when that creeping young man finds the hexing of the true saints, he might start thinking there is some truth to its nonsense. He might start talking about it. And we can't have that, right, Michael? I still couldn't really speak. Touch the scar on your chest. It is from a burn. It was placed there by fire that is immaterial. It is shaped like something. I think it has been there for a long time. You survived, for now. But the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral, Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.